Some Stormzy and Ed Sheeran, a bit of Sheryl Crow, and some Sugar Babes to slip in our computer playout system. I was going to say slip in the tape machine there. We obviously don't have a tape machine. To play you in the next hour on the show. Plus, we will be catching up with the Lady Justice True Crime podcast, which features a Suffolk murder story, one that you probably have not heard about. In the uploads, we'll be returning to the...
All right, so as you might have guessed, I'm not doing a standard podcast today. This week's podcast is actually going to be kind of in celebration of a fellow podcaster. She is British. She does her work overseas. She's tapped into a lot of cool stuff. Her name is Chantelle, and she does a show called Lady Justice. The Lady Justice podcast can be found on iTunes and Stitcher and all the big ones. She's also, I think, coming out on the new Amazon music thing, the Google Nest or whatever it's called. I'm sure she'll talk about that. In any case, she's going to be going on the BBC Live Suffolk in a couple of minutes, as the announcer just mentioned there, and she's going to be talking about her show. So let's stay tuned and see what she says.
Kiss on My List on BBC Radio Suffolk, 7 minutes past 7. Good evening, welcome to the show. I'm John Wright. Now, we like to celebrate podcasters and people being creative in different ways of storytelling. And so I'm always on the lookout for interesting podcasts. And I came across the Lady Justice True Crime podcast. And this week, the episode has a Suffolk story to it. It sounds a bit like this.
Old woman Brown laid on her deathbed and called out for a magistrate to attend her bedside. Raising from her bed, she told the man in front of her, "I have something to tell you before I die. Stumpy's gone, and so shall I be soon, so that don't matter. You know the officer that was murdered and robbed by the Martlesham Lion? I and Stumpy had done that. You know the captain that was found in a sack? I and Stumpy put him in. We drugged him first, and then took his money and sewed him up. Fitch saw Stumpy put him in the river, but he made it all right with him. When you sent for 2 clergymen when Fitch was dying, Stumpy says to me, 'He's a-gonna blab. You best stop him.' I knowed what he meant, so I stuck a pillow on his face after you were gone. He went off quite easy and natural-like, and he hadn't had long to live anyways. That's all about Fitch. Stumpy killed old Aiton because he had prosecuted him, and it weren't likely he was going to stand for that."
An excerpt from the Lady Justice True Crime podcast. The episode coming this week is called Stumpy Brown, looking at the forgotten serial killer Samuel Stumpy Brown from the Woodbridge area. Chantelle Wilson does the podcast. Hi, Chantelle.
Oh, hello.
Why pick something so grisly and gruesome to be the thing that you do and spend all your time researching?
I think it's because there are so many forgotten victims. When I've been obsessed with true crime for a very long time, there are plenty of podcasts out there. But when I go through research, I find these little notes at the bottom of a newspaper that's like 2 or 3 lines about a victim. And they shouldn't be forgotten. So I like to do cases that people wouldn't have heard about.
Okay, so it's bringing those stories to life and to share them from the clip that we heard. So do you do all the voices?
Yes.
Yeah.
I grew up in Saxmundham, so it's one of those things where going back to do a case from Suffolk, my first ever case was from Leiston. So it's one of those things where I get to revisit places that I've been, but through historical or present day crimes.
So talk me through how you go about putting an episode together. I mean, there's a lot of research to be done in this. Is that, have you got lots on the go at a time, or how does it work?
I generally only do research one case at a time, because otherwise you can get muddled up with facts. But I do about 25 hours on a normal episode. And then you just write it up and put it together.
And people like it. People respond, and it, like you say, there are lots of variations of the kind of true crime podcast out there, but it's finding an audience.
Yeah, there are some of the guys that have been at it for a very long time, like Adam from UK True Crime or Paul from True Crime Enthusiast, and they are fantastic British indie pods. But there are plenty of newer ones that are coming through. such as like Crime Labs and Morbidology, who really do have a different perspective on the entire genre.
Is there, I mean, you spoke about the importance of the victims at the start, and actually at the start of each of your podcasts, you speak about with sensitivity about the victims and their families. Is that it's hard, isn't it? You don't want to kind of celebrate the terrible deeds as can, I don't know. There's a risk there, maybe.
Yeah. This isn't about glamorizing killers. It's a very hard thing to try and do, to make sure that you're putting the facts across. But you're not celebrating these people that do these horrific things. You're remembering the victims. And I think that's where people get a bit confused about true crime. But each story that you hear is somebody's story. And no matter how grisly and horrible it is, it has happened and it has affected somebody. These people were loved, and no matter how much time has gone by, it doesn't mean they should be forgotten.
So you start doing the podcast, it gains traction. What's your kind of plan for it? Is this the brand to do, or do you do other ones, or how is the world of podcasting?
I've got this one, which is going to be a year old actually on October 3rd. So I've got a bit of a special coming up for that. I've got a really big announcement that comes out on the episode for Stumpy Brown. There's a big announcement on that episode. I do have another one that's in pre-production at the moment, which is focusing more on the injustice that women face within our UK criminal justice system. So that's going to be a very different take on kind of true crime, but it does focus on, how we could do better within our criminal justice system.
I mean, that sounds like a very important set of stories to share and to highlight, like you say, the way that certain groups, women included, are treated by the justice system. And again, that must be quite, I don't know, depressing, harrowing to immerse yourself in.
It can be, yeah. You've got to find a balance, I suppose. Like, I do this because I have a passion for it. I suppose if you didn't have a passion for it, you'd probably get burnt out pretty easily. But the community is so great. The podcasters and, the listeners, they're absolutely fantastic. And we're all here for one another, which is what's brilliant about the community. I was somebody who suffered from domestic violence, which is what kind of led me into the genre. And it's kind of like, it's got a safety net in it. So it's very strange that something so dark can have such a warm community around it.
Yeah, and it's a very honest and kind of democratic relationship that you have with the listeners, because they can talk to you on the social media. It's your feedback and I guess the number of people listening is all very immediate and open.
Mm-hmm. It's one of those things. This isn't a big show. This is what's brilliant about indie podcasts, and they're based across the world. Indie podcasts don't have the big production teams around them. They are far more of a passion project, which means as hosts, we always want to hear back from listeners. We also really want just to kind of have fun with it and learn from other people. This isn't something that, you're never going to be able to reach out. It's not like a big TV show where you'll never hear from one of us. If you reach out to pretty much any indie podcaster, they will respond.
And you mentioned that you grew up in Saxmundham. Where are you now?
I'm currently up in the northeast. I'm in Hartlepool, but that was due to COVID. I was meant to move back down this summer, but pandemics and all that.
Not at the moment. So are you in kind of extra lockdown measures?
No, everywhere around me is, apart from where I live. So my town's perfectly fine, but basically every other county around me completely shut down.
Well, we will see. We're going to hear from the Prime Minister in 45 minutes' time with his address to the nation, so we'll find out what the next 6 months or so has in store. So the Stumpy Brown episode, is out on Thursday. Where and when can we access it?
You can access it pretty much anywhere on any podcatcher, so Apple, Spotify, even on things like Alexa and Google Home. And it'll just be out on Thursday. I can't remember what else you said there.
It'll be out on Thursday with a big announcement.
With a big announcement, and I've got a promo for a fantastic podcast that's actually going to be a documentary. It's called Big Trouble in Little Quartzsite by Legally Insane Films, which I'm really excited about because I'm obsessed with it.
Superb. Well, we will wait to hear more about Stumpy Brown from the Woodbridge area. Keep on making them, and thank you very much for your time this evening. That's Chantelle Wilson, the Lady Justice True Crime Podcast. As she says, go to any of your podcast places and ask for it, and it shall be delivered.
Well, that was her. She kind of blew me away a little bit there with a huge shout out at the end. I was totally not expecting that. I did know that she was going to mention my podcast in her recent show, but I had definitely no idea that she was going to actually plug me across the BBC. That's pretty awesome. Man, that just says a lot. I mean, I was already going to talk about her heart and her passion and everything like that, but she really does have, if it's not evident by the interview that we just heard, she's got a big heart for the victims of horrible crimes. It kind of goes without saying, but she's also a big plugger of the shows she listens to. You know, that says a lot about where her heart really is in all of this. She supports others, just as she kind of makes a special effort to point out that each victim is loved. You know, they're a family member, they're a brother, sister, father, aunt, uncle, whomever. Sadly, frequently they're children as well. But in any case, she's never too far away from reminding people that these people are, you know, they're people. They're something to someone's family. They were a family member who will never be forgotten, even though the story sometimes gets sensationalized, or the member themselves gets overshadowed in those details. So that just tells you where she's at, if that interview did nothing else. I'm sitting here like blushing because she pointed me out. So in any case, thank you so much, Chantelle. I'll be sure to return the favor. Actually, I think I think a return of that is in order. So anyway, I'll end this podcast here. I just want to make a special podcast just for her. She's a neat gal, smart. She's got a master's degree. She does a lot of advocacy work. Check out her show on all of the mediums she just mentioned: Stitcher, iTunes. Lady Justice, check her out. Thanks for listening to the Big Trouble in Little Quartzsite podcast. And just so that I have myself covered in a country that frequently tramples freedom of speech, due to the documentary nature of this podcast and the necessity of including a segment for educational purposes recorded from live radio that has presumably paid for its commercial content, this particular episode has inadvertently captured copyrighted works. It should be known that Legally Insane Films has neither paid for nor supported any commercial works that were unavoidably recorded in the process of creating this nonfiction and newsworthy media. Until next time, I'm your host, Kyle O'Donnell. We'll see you then. Follow us on Twitter at Kyle O'Donnell, where I have lots of updates from this and other podcasts, as well as the film and other things I'm into. Also, visit the website and purchase your copy of Part 1 of the documentary. It's out right now. This has been a production of Legally Insane Films, LLC.